Another fool in the world, venting. I am writing this from a bus terminal. I had some very difficult times a few years ago and bought into the dreams and ambitions of someone close to me whom I trusted. In the end, I got screwed, but that doesn't mean you can't trust those close to you, but rather that you have to and will have to choose carefully with charts and calculations about it. The people around you greatly influence who you are, and how you will be. The beginning was hard work. I had to move from my hometown to Goiânia to have better job opportunities, whereas in my hometown I had zero opportunities. I wasn't alone. I already had a relative who was living in the city, and he got me a job. We'll call him Arab. He doesn't have any connection with the Arab people. The name comes more from his mother's wish. She admired Arabic names. He is married to lawyer. We will call her that because she studied directly. I lived with them and lived with them. I worked, always working. The Arab wanted to be rich, who doesn't? He wanted to become a successful entrepreneur. Lawyer supported him, and I worked with the Arab in a transport company. Lawyer was a housewife and sold some things that made little profit. The Arab wanted to open a burger joint, artisanal burgers. He had in mind that the first step to having more financial stability and scaling our economic system was to have his own business, extra income. I agree with him, but there were always nuances. My life with them, living with them. It was as if I were a foreigner, and let's face it, I am. Wife and husband now share an apartment with an 18-year-old boy with no ambitions, and, speaking in the most optimistic way possible, a boy with no experience whatsoever who was discovering the world. Not innocent, but naive. The Arab man and I worked like a father of three in this company, often overtime. Other times we had to work until dawn for the minimum wage at the time, 1,400. They included me in their plans. They included me as the person they could trust, the jack of all trades. The jack of all trades and who receives little. I say now, thinking back. We had to align our work routines and get started on the burger shop. We already had a commercial space, so it wasn't that tiring, and we didn't have to build walls and roofs for that. But that was a happy and hopeful beginning. The perfect beginning for a story that could be told in one of those online courses on how to get rich in 5 months. Comic factor aside, we opened the burger joint. I took my cousin's job as a foreman at the transportation company. I didn't get a pay raise because the company isn't big or clean enough to afford that luxury. To be honest, that was the decision that led me to discover burnout. My daily routine from Monday to Saturday was to wake up at 6:30 and go to work. I would arrive at 7 hours and prepare the delivery documentation and other paperwork and documents on the computer. At 7:30, I would load the trucks alone because the company, which was somewhat dirty and small, did not have the budget to provide helpers for a service that would only last the morning part of the day. The trucks were released at 8, and from then on I had to stay at the company to count the inventory for the next day, monitor deliveries, and provide support for possible problems. All of this would end at 18, with luck by 17. At 19:30, I would open the burger shop. A few months later, in the first 4 to 5 months, the lawyer and the Arab would open with me. The burger joint closed at 11:30 p.m. on slow days. On busy days, we would go as late as we could find it. Our bellies were hungry for a homemade burger with 150 grain of meat, 70% ground beef, and 30% fat to bind it together. We made it on Wednesdays during business hours, so if someone could travel back in time and find this burger joint in a roundabout, they would find me kneading balls of ground beef into the shape of a meat disc. That same traveler would notice that I alternated between flattening a meatball and serving whoever sat on our humble black plastic chairs. The burger joint was open from Wednesdays to Mondays, while the not-so-clean and financially under-resourced transportation company was open from Mondays to Saturdays. My routine obviously changed from time to time, usually increasing my time at one of the two jobs. Trucks broke down and hungry bellies looked for meat discs between bread, lettuce, and tomato, a green sauce composed mostly of soybean oil and our special seasoning, black pepper and salt. I had 2 half-days off a week, which weren't days off. On Tuesday nights when we didn't open the burger joint, we had to use some of the company's trucks. The company never complained about letting us do this as long as we paid for the diesel fuel. On Sundays, it was the same thing. People move in the hope that their lives will change too, and we gave these people the opportunity to take the fruits of their hard work with them for the right and agreed-upon price. Report of my worst date I've ever had. Relationships. Hi, I'm 18 months old and I came to talk about the worst date I've ever had. Well, it all started when I met a guy the same age as me on Facebook dating. I thought he was cool and we started talking, but he had some really unrelated conversations, lol. He kept saying he was hot. I didn't want to say anything, but he wasn't, lol. Anyway, it's important to have self-esteem. Despite everything, he was a cool person. Anyway, we kept talking and talking. And then we decided to meet at the mall here in the city. Finally, I got there, we met, then we went to lunch. Guys, the kid wouldn't stop eating, lol. He ate the burger combo with fries, a big plate of giraffe lunchbox with a plastic spoon looking like an animal. He ate some ice cream and even bought some thin candies. Besides that, he didn't pay attention to me. He kept talking some chatter that had nothing to do with anime rap. So after all that eating, he kept walking around. He talked more to the people at the mall than to me. So far, so good. Then he decided to take those little cars, you know? As a child and started driving, people all looked at me with a look, oh, how embarrassing, cock. Then after that, he wanted to buy a scooter, and he spent another half hour talking to all the salespeople at the mall. Well, at least he bought me a chocolate and a flower, but my God, what a terrible encounter. Then 5 days later, he said he was with someone else, but that he would still like me? What a disappointment, Lowell. Oh man, I prefer to get involved with people my own age, but look, it's hard, you know, every single person that comes my way. Youth is sick. The world of today's girls is unreal. Controversial Monday. I left college early and got ready to train. I arrived at the gym around 5:30 p.m. It's not my usual time, so there were a lot of people there that I didn't know. A lot of young people, 18, 19, 20 years old. I went to do my mobility, which takes about 15 minutes, and two girls who didn't look older than 20 were close by, sharing their romantic experiences with each other. Ignoring the fact that there was, to a certain extent, a dispute about which relationship gave them the best experiences, while one criticized the other, under the pretext of being worried about the guy's excessive commitment. The criticized one mentioned with some delight that the guy had bought her an international ticket and they were going to travel, and the trip would have cost him 12,000 Rs, and she wasn't going to spend a dime. In turn, the listener and critic said that she was with a guy from Fortaleza. The gym is in Salvador, and since they were talking about college too, I assume he lives here, who every 2 weeks provided her with trips at his expense and good parties, restaurants, etc. Neither of them mentioned the guy's ages. But the question here is another. What young woman in her early 20s has this condition? Everything revolved around money. Behavioral aspects were not even mentioned. Guys, the youth are going crazy. I confess that it affected me because I'm starting to earn money now, and it made me realize how foolish I was to flirt with the hippie movement, deny money, and so on. And maybe that explains a lot in my life. Mainly the repression of the feeling of rejection and not knowing how to deal with people who approach me today, especially women who didn't see me on their radar. It made me feel a bit disgusted. I admit it. A girl who has built nothing in her life and accepts a guy spending all that money on her, knowing how the world is, what message does that send? Honestly, my bar is getting higher and higher, and it's not because I'm a badass or think I'm a badass, it's because the average person these days is depressing.